I only had $100 to my name,
which is crazy now that I'm looking back at it. Guys, it's your girl Demi, aka Speedy. I hope everybody has been well. This video is going to be a little bit of a personal video, kind of talking about my personal development and basically how I got to where I am right now. I am 26 years old. I have my own apartment, and I really didn't have an easy beginning, but hopefully this video can help inspire others that are in tough situations and feel like they can't get through them. So I was born in Elmhurst Hospital in 1997. I lived with my parents and my brothers and my sisters briefly, even though I don't recall how that was. And our upbringing was kind of like, okay, we didn't necessarily have the best conditions. However, you know, our parents tried their best to give us a good life. When I was 5 years old, my family went into some financial hardship and I got sent to the Dominican Republic, and it was pretty shocking for me being 5 years old, being sent away and ripped apart from my parents. I had to go to school, and I remember my first day at school, I didn't know where to go. I was very upset. It was a humongous school and I just wasn't used to the situation, and I had to transfer to a private school. I had a nanny that took care of me and she was really great. And you know, I felt some kind of closeness to her. She was really there for me when my aunt, who I lived with at the time, was not there, and I was sent with my brother. Eventually, 6 months later, I got sent back to the US, and it was very shocking for me. I lived in an apartment in Queens, and you know, I didn't really fit in with the other children, and I also had a little bit of a language barrier, which was really, really rough for me. I only spoke Spanish, and I had trouble with kind of like passing school because the educational system in the US is very different from the Dominican Republic, and I ended up failing the second grade, which was really rough on me. Eventually, I was able to do better, but you know, my family and we were going through some rough things. So we had to move about every 2 years, and you know, it was just kind of hard because I felt like I wanted some support, and I know that my parents couldn't always be present for me when they wanted to be, so I just tried my best to fit in school. And then eventually I got sent to the Dominican Republic when I was 15 years old. And it was really, really hard because I was basically stripped from everything that I knew. I lived with my mother, and that was very foreign to me because she wasn't really around. And basically just trying to pass is way more difficult there than in the US. You need a minimum of a 70 to pass. It was all in Spanish. I had mostly conversational Spanish from living in the US. So I really, really struggled with kind of acclimating myself and fitting in. But you know, I tried to be very independent and use a lot of skills, considering that I got out of school earlier than people in America. I got out at 1 p.m. I tried my best to kind of be a functioning human being and learn what it was like to somewhat be independent, because I had the determination to move back to the US after I graduated high school. I did eventually accomplish that. Was able to graduate at 19 years old, and about 2 months later I was back in New York, and I only had $100 to my name, which is crazy now that I'm looking back at it. And I lived some time with my sister for a few months, and eventually I moved in with my brother and his girlfriend. I moved in with my brother and his girlfriend. We shared a studio, and I was sleeping on the couch. I only had a suitcase. And I got my first job at 7-Eleven in Bed-Stuy. I lived in the Upper West Side, so at the time it was a very long commute, and Bed-Stuy was very dangerous. We kept getting robbed at gunpoint. But I finally learned what it was like to have my own money, and I was paying off some student loans that I had taken out. So, you know, I had quite a few responsibilities. Eventually, I was able to secure a job somewhere else in Victoria's Secret in 34th Street, and I finally knew what it was like to really work in a flagship store. I didn't know the potential that I had, And with the income from that, and also with some freelance things that I did with background acting because I wanted to be an actress, I was able to secure my first apartment. I didn't know that taking out student loans would help me get my apartment, but it did because it gave me some credit. Living in my first apartment was very interesting. I actually lived in a basement that I found out later on was illegal, and it was a really rough time because I just kept getting floods and floods, and the management really sucked, and it just felt like a really dark place. And I ended up quitting Victoria's Secret.
Oh, you gotta sign it?
No, I don't know how I gotta sign it. Can you just give me a medium bag? You give me small ones?
Grandma in your fucking Tinder picture for her.
Yo, what's good? At the time I wasn't working, I was just doing acting and modeling. And eventually I was able to secure a job at Starbucks. I did that for a few months, but it just wasn't doing what it needed to do. And I just felt like I was in a dark place, and I didn't know what I would do. And then COVID hit, 2020, and it was just really crazy. I felt like I didn't know how to go about my life. Financially, I was kind of like struggling for some time, considering that I didn't have a job, and it just was not fun for me at all. I quit Victoria's Secret originally because I felt like I wasn't getting promoted, and I felt like I deserved that. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna apply for a job at Under Armour as management or anything and prove myself, because I felt like I wasn't getting that at Victoria's Secret. I ended up applying to be a salesperson, and I actually got the job as supervisor. Turns out that the key holder quit around the time that I got hired. I got the job as a manager. It was really great. And, I just feel like I really grew as an individual, but my living conditions were not it. I was really concerned about how I was going to get somewhere else to live, especially like because at a time I was withholding rent because the living conditions were so bad. I was withholding rent. I was really stressed out because it gave me PTSD from, not being in the best conditions when I was younger. So I was like, all right, let me look for an apartment and see what I can do. I actually was able to secure an apartment, which is the one that I live in now. With the credit and all of like my income, because I saved a lot of money, and my credit was just pretty high for somebody of my age. It's so much bigger than the one that I had before, and the rent was higher, but it was totally worth it. I ended up actually getting a discount for it, and management was totally cool. But when I worked for Under Armour, I felt like it wasn't sustainable enough for the rent that I was paying in this current apartment. So I applied to Bloomingdale's about 7 times. I applied for different positions, but I had the idea that since I was a manager for Under Armour, maybe I could get into luxury. Eventually, I was able to get into luxury. I started in Saint Laurent, and then I did some time in Bottega. I was able to secure my job in luxury handbags, which was really great for me. And then eventually my credit started going up and higher, and I was actually able to secure my first American Express card after my first credit card in general. Looking back, I'm only 26. I have my own apartment. I have furniture that I'm so grateful for. Those are little things that you take for granted, and I am just so grateful for it, because there was a time that I had nothing. And the point of this video is just to show that with determination and hard work, you can get where you need to be. but you have to have a plan of how you're going to execute it, and you need to really visualize, like, this is the life that I want to have. I wouldn't be living in the neighborhood that I dreamed in without all this stuff that I put my mind to. Sometimes it feels like you're alone and you don't know how to get to some specific place, but as long as you have a plan, you can do whatever you put your mind to.